A poor girl tells a paralyzed mafia boss, "Spare my dad and I'll heal you." They laughed until they saw what she could do. When her father can't repay his debt, the desperate physical therapist makes an impossible offer to the most feared man in the city. 3 months to help him walk again, or they both die. Locked in his mansion, surrounded by killers and guns, she begins her treatments, not knowing the man who shot him is watching her every move. As feeling returns to his legs, something else awakens between them. His touch should terrify her, but it's his tenderness that's truly dangerous. When the boss takes his first steps, his enemies make their move. Now the girl who came to save her father must choose: escape this violent world, or stand beside a man who kills without mercy but looks at her with love. Will the healer become part of his bloody empire, or will the monster she's bringing back to power destroy everything she loves? The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Allie fumbled with her keys, her worn messenger bag, threatening to spill its contents across her apartment floor. Coffee splashed from her travel mug onto her scrubs, another stain to add to the collection. "Dad, pick up, please," she muttered, phone pressed to her ear as she hopped on one foot, struggling to get her shoe on. His voicemail clicked on for the 5th time that day. "Dad, it's me again. Call me back when you get this. I'm worried." The tiny apartment felt suffocating this morning. Bills scattered across her kitchen counter next to research papers her father had left during his last visit. Her eyes caught on the red, "Final Notice," stamped across one envelope before she shoved it into a drawer. No time to think about that now. The community clinic's waiting room was already packed when she arrived, 10 minutes late. Sorry, she called to Nancy at reception, who just waved her through with an understanding smile. They were all used to running behind here, understaffed and overwhelmed. "Ms. Romano," Tommy, her 10 a.m. patient, brightened as she entered the treatment room. The teenager had been told he'd never walk again after a car accident 6 months ago. Traditional physical therapy had yielded minimal results. "Ready to show me what you've been practicing?" Allie pulled her hair into a messy bun, setting up the equipment they'd need. The modified technique she'd developed with her father might be unconventional, but the results spoke for themselves. "Watch this." Tommy gripped the parallel bars, determination etching his young face. With focused movements that Allie had drilled into muscle memory, he managed 3 shaky steps before his legs gave out. "Tommy, that's amazing." Allie steadied him back into his wheelchair, her heart swelling. 3 steps might seem small to some, but she'd seen his initial scans. This was practically miraculous. "The other doctors said it was impossible." Tommy's mother wiped tears from her eyes. "But you never gave up on him." Different approach, different results, Allie smiled, though her chest tightened. How many others could benefit if her father's research was properly funded, if they weren't drowning in debt from her mother's medical bills and funeral costs? The rest of her shift passed in a blur of patience and paperwork. By the time she checked her phone again, the sun had set. One new message from an unknown number made her pause. "Your father needs you. Come alone." Below it, an address in the city's wealthiest district. Her hands trembled as she plugged the address into her GPS. Every instinct screamed this was a trap, but if her father was in trouble, she couldn't take the chance of ignoring it. The mansion loomed against the night sky, all gleaming windows and imposing stonework. Armed men stood at attention as she approached the wrought iron gates, their faces impassive as they patted her down with rough efficiency. Her medical ID was checked, then rechecked. "This way," one guard grunted, leading her through marble corridors that probably cost more than she'd make in 10 lifetimes. More men lined the halls, hands resting casually on holstered weapons. Their eyes followed her movement with predatory focus. Her escort stopped at a heavy wooden door, ornately carved with scenes of ancient battles. Without warning, he shoved her inside. The study was dimly lit by a massive fireplace, flames casting dancing shadows across leather-bound books and what looked like priceless artwork. But Allie's attention locked onto 2 figures, her father kneeling on an expensive Persian rug, blood trickling from his split lip, and behind a massive mahogany desk, a man in a wheelchair regarded her with eyes like Arctic ice. Even seated, Matteo Ricci radiated lethal authority. His tailored suit probably cost more than her yearly salary, but it was his stillness that truly terrified her. The coiled tension of a predator deciding whether to strike. Dark hair fell across his forehead in careful dishevelment, while a strong jaw clenched with barely contained violence. The lock clicked behind her with quiet finality. Alessandra Romano. His voice was smooth as aged whiskey, at odds with the cruel twist of his mouth. Your father has told me so much about your unique abilities. Ali, I'm so sorry, her father choked out before a guard cuffed him sharply across the back of the head. Dad! She started forward instinctively but froze when multiple weapons turned in her direction. That's close enough! Mateo's command stopped her cold. His wheelchair moved with silent precision as he approached, clinical interest in his assessment. I find myself in need of a physical therapist with your particular expertise, one who isn't afraid to try experimental methods. Ali's mind raced, connecting horrible dots, her father's mysterious research funding, the mounting debts, his increasingly erratic behavior. What did you do? She whispered, unable to tear her gaze from her father's bowed head. He made promises he couldn't keep, Mateo answered instead, voice deceptively gentle. But you, Ms. Romano, you might be able to save him yet, if you're as talented as he claims. The fireplace crackled in the heavy silence as Ali looked between her father's defeated form and the dangerous man studying her with such calculated interest. Her hands clenched at her sides, mind spinning with limited options. What exactly are you proposing? She finally managed, proud that her voice barely shook. Mateo's smile didn't reach his eyes. Simple. You'll live here, treating me with these innovative techniques your father developed. If I walk again, his debt is forgiven. If not, he shrugged elegantly. Well, let's focus on positive outcomes. Behind him, her father made a small sound of despair. Ali's heart thundered in her chest as the full weight of her situation pressed down. She was trapped in a mansion full of killers, with a mafia boss holding her father's life as collateral. Ali's heart stopped as Matteo Ricci's words cut through the ornate study. $2 million, his fingers drummed against the mahogany desk. Your father was quite persuasive about needing funding for his groundbreaking research. The pieces clicked into horrible place. After her mother's devastating illness and costly funeral, her father had grown increasingly desperate to continue his work. But this... I trusted you would understand, Bella. Her father's voice cracked. After what happened to your mother... The burly enforcer's hand cracked across her father's face, sending him sprawling. Blood sprayed across the Persian rug. Stop! Ali lunged forward without thinking, placing herself between her father and his attacker. Her hands trembled, but her voice remained steady. Don't touch him again! The guard reached for her, but Mateo's sharp command froze him mid-motion. Stand down! Something flickered in those ice-blue eyes as he studied her protective stance. Interest, perhaps, or amusement at her foolish bravery. You see, Ms. Romano, the Ricci family has principles. Matteo wheeled closer, his presence no less intimidating for his seated position. Debts must be paid. In money. His gaze flicked to her father's huddled form. Or in blood. Ali's mind raced. $2 million might as well be $2 billion. She'd never earned that much at the clinic. But her father's research, her own skills. Spare my father and I'll heal you, she blurted. I'll make you walk again. Laughter erupted around the room. Hard, mocking sounds that bounced off leather-bound books and priceless artwork. But Matteo didn't laugh. He studied her face with unnerving intensity before raising one hand. The room fell silent instantly. Bold claims from such a tiny thing. His voice carried equal parts skepticism and intrigue. What makes you think you can succeed where the best specialists in Europe failed? Ali lifted her chin. Because I combine traditional physical therapy with my father's experimental techniques. I've helped patients walk who were told they never would again. At that little community clinic, someone snickered. Yes, she turned to face the voice. Where I treat people others have given up on, people without millions to spend on fancy doctors who follow outdated protocols. More murmurs, but Matteo silenced them with a look. He wheeled even closer, close enough that Ali could smell his expensive cologne and see the fierce intelligence burning behind his cold facade. 3 months, he declared. You have 3 months to show significant progress. You'll live here, treating me daily. His lips curved in a dangerous smile. Consider it an all-expenses-paid residency. And my father will remain here as collateral, in considerably more comfort than he currently enjoys, provided you hold up your end of the bargain. Ali's stomach churned at the implied threat. I want to see him regularly, and proper medical care for any injuries your men caused. A surprised murmur rippled through the room at her audacity to negotiate, but Matteo merely inclined his head. Granted, though I'd focus less on his minor scrapes and more on ensuring your treatments succeed, for both your sakes. Within the hour, a stern-faced housekeeper led Allie to her new quarters. The room was larger than her entire apartment, with hand-painted silk wallpaper and a bed that could sleep 6. A walk-in closet already held designer clothes in her size. The bathroom gleamed with marble and gold fixtures. But the windows, though offering a spectacular view of the manicured grounds, were equipped with sophisticated security systems. The heavy door locked from the outside, and uniformed guards patrolled the paths below with military precision. Through gathering dusk, Allie watched 2 men escort her father to a small guest house across the gardens. Though well-appointed, the building was clearly as much a prison as her gilded cage. Armed guards took up positions at every entrance. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, reality crashing down. She was trapped in a mansion full of killers, with 3 months to heal a ruthless crime boss or watch her father die. Her entire life had been reduced to a brutal equation. Success meant survival, failure meant death. The setting sun painted the grounds blood red as darkness crept in. Somewhere in this massive house, Matteo Ricci was probably already planning tomorrow's first therapy session, expecting miracles she wasn't sure she could deliver. Her father was locked away, paying for his desperate gamble with freedom and pain, and Allie stood alone in her beautiful prison, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life, or her only possible choice. A soft knock announced dinner being delivered. An elegant meal on fine china that she couldn't bring herself to touch. The guard's footsteps echoed in the hallway, a constant reminder of her captivity. As night fell, completely, Allie curled into a ball on the massive bed, still fully dressed, her mind spinning with medical protocols and treatment plans. She had to succeed. There was no other option. Through the window, she could just make out the lights burning in her father's new prison, matching the ones in her own. Separated but connected by the impossible situation they'd landed in, tomorrow she would begin the hardest challenge of her career, healing a man who dealt in death and violence, while praying her skills were enough to save the only family she had left. Sunrise painted the mansion's corridors in deceptive warmth as Dante's heavy footsteps echoed behind Allie. His presence loomed like a shadow, steering her through a maze of hallways with silent efficiency. After 3 flights of stairs and countless turns, they reached a set of double doors that opened into what looked like a private hospital wing. State-of-the-art equipment filled the room, from parallel bars to electronic stimulation units. The morning light streamed through tall windows, illuminating pristine surfaces and chrome details that probably cost more than her entire clinic. But Allie's professional assessment was interrupted by Matteo's commanding presence. He sat in his wheelchair near the windows, dressed in tailored black pants and a crisp white shirt that emphasized his broad shoulders. His expression was carved from stone, skepticism radiating from every line of his face. "Your medical records," Allie requested, maintaining eye contact despite her racing heart. "I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." Dante produced a thick file without comment. Allie settled into a nearby chair, studying x-rays and surgical notes with growing focus. The bullet had struck between the T10 and T12 vertebrae, causing an incomplete spinal cord injury. Previous doctors had declared the damage permanent, but their conventional approaches missed crucial opportunities. "The injury isn't complete," she finally said, looking up to find Matteo, watching her intently. "There's potential for significant recovery, but my methods are intense." Meaning? "We combine aggressive physical therapy with experimental nerve stimulation techniques my father developed. It's painful, exhausting, and requires total commitment." She laid out her treatment plan, detailing daily sessions that would push his body to its limits. Matteo's laugh held no humor. "You expect me to subject myself to that torture based on theories from a man who couldn't even pay his debts?" Allie stood, squaring her shoulders. "Are you strong enough to endure what it takes, or should I tell my father goodbye now?" The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dante shifted menacingly, but Matteo held up one hand, studying Allie with new interest. "Begin." The next 2 hours were brutal. Allie's hands moved with practiced precision, manipulating Matteo's legs through targeted exercises while monitoring his responses. She pushed hard, ignoring his occasional sharp intakes of breath. When she introduced electrical stimulation to specific muscle groups, his jaw clenched, but he remained silent. Sweat dampened his shirt as she worked, her own muscles straining to support his larger frame through complex movements. She noted every micro-response, each tiny muscle twitch that suggested remaining nerve function. By session's end, they were both exhausted. "Same time tomorrow," she said, wiping her hands on a towel. "Ice the muscle groups I marked for 20 minutes, then heat. The pain will get worse before it gets better." Matteo's expression remained unreadable, but she caught a glimmer of something like respect before Dante wheeled him away. Later that afternoon, Allie tried using the house phone in her room to call her colleague Maria. She needed consultation on adapting certain techniques, but Dante materialized before she could dial. "No outside contact," he said, removing the phone with efficient finality. "Boss's orders. I need professional consultation to... You need to remember your position here." His quiet tone carried clear warning. "Focus on your work, nothing else." Frustration and isolation pressed in as evening approached. After picking at another elaborate dinner she couldn't taste, Allie waited until the hallway guard changed shifts. She slipped out, using service corridors she'd mentally mapped earlier, making it halfway to the guest house before floodlights suddenly illuminated the garden. Guards emerged from the shadows, surrounding her with weapons drawn. Her heart hammered as they escorted her back inside, not to her room, but to Matteo's study. He sat behind an antique desk, looking remarkably untired for someone who'd endured such an intense therapy session. "Trying to run already, little healer?" "I wanted to check on my father." Something shifted in his expression. After a long moment, he nodded to Dante. 10 minutes. Supervised." The guest house was elegant, but clearly fortified. Her father's face crumpled when he saw her, arms wrapping her in a desperate embrace despite Dante's watchful presence. "You have to get out," he whispered urgently. "This situation is worse than you know. Matteo's enemies are circling. Whoever shot him wants to finish the job, and his own family..." He glanced nervously at Dante before continuing even softer. "They're turning against him while he's vulnerable. You'll be caught in the crossfire when..." "Time's up," Dante interrupted, moving forward with quiet authority. Allie squeezed her father's hands, trying to convey strength she didn't feel. "I'll heal him. It's our only way out now." Back in her room, she pressed her forehead against the cool window glass, watching guards patrol the moonlit grounds with military precision. The mansion's luxury couldn't disguise its true nature, a fortress under siege, with enemies both outside and in. And she was trapped here, trying to heal a man marked for death while praying her skills were enough to save them all. Her father's warning echoed in her mind as she methodically reviewed the day's treatment notes, documenting every response and planning tomorrow's session. The therapy room's equipment might be top of the line, but it was her innovative techniques that held the key to Matteo's recovery. She had to succeed, not just for her father's life now, but possibly for her own. A scream pierced the mansion's silence, jolting Allie awake. She sat up in her luxurious prison, heart pounding, as another agonized cry echoed through the corridors. Without thinking, she slipped from her bed and followed the sound, bare feet silent on marble floors. 2 guards stood outside Matteo's bedroom, exchanging uncertain glances as their boss's nightmare continued. They moved to stop her, but Allie pushed past, driven by instinct rather than reason. Moonlight spilled through tall windows, illuminating Matteo, thrashing in sweat-soaked sheets. His face, usually masked in cold control, twisted in anguish. Allie approached carefully, recognizing the signs of night terror from her clinic patients. "Matteo," she called softly. "You're safe. It's just a dream." The moment her hand touched his shoulder, his eyes snapped open. Before she could blink, his fingers locked around her throat, yanking her down until their faces nearly touched. His eyes were wild, unseeing. "Matteo!" she choked out. "It's Ailey!" Recognition slowly dawned. His grip loosened but didn't release entirely, as if he needed the contact to ground himself in reality. This close, she saw the vulnerability beneath his usual armor, fear, pain, and something haunted that made him seem suddenly young. Sweat darkened his shirt, tremors running through his powerful frame. For one unguarded moment, she glimpsed not the fearsome mafia boss, but a broken man fighting his own demons. His voice came rough. "Get out!" The next morning's therapy session crackled with tension. Matteo refused to meet her eyes as she worked on his back muscles, his shoulders rigid with more than just physical strain. Her hands found unusual scarring pattern beneath his shoulder blade, distinct from his recent gunshot wounds. "Old wounds," he said shortly when she paused. "These look deliberate." Her fingers traced the methodical lines. "Systematic." Silence stretched until she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "My father believed pain built character." The clinical part of her brain cataloged the damage, while her heart ached at the implication. She continued working, letting the rhythm of therapy fill the loaded quiet. "The recent shooting," she ventured carefully. It happened at your mother's grave? His jaw tightened. The only predictable part of my routine. Visiting her is necessary. Where is she now? Private care facility. She hasn't spoken since my father's death. His voice held carefully controlled rage. 8 years in silence. A particularly painful muscle spasm hit, making him hiss. Without thinking, Ali's hand moved to his shoulder, offering comfort rather than clinical pressure. Their eyes met in the mirror, and something electric passed between them. Recognition, perhaps, of shared understanding about family wounds. Later that afternoon, Ali took a wrong turn exploring the mansion's maze-like corridors. Opening what she thought was the library door, she found herself in a sun-filled room scattered with drafting tables and architectural drawings. Mateo sat in his wheelchair by the windows, pencil moving across paper with surprising grace. He didn't look up immediately, allowing her to study the elegant lines taking shape beneath his hands. Modern design, she said, recognizing the style from her own abandoned architectural studies. Mixed-use development? Now he did look up, surprise flickering across his features. You know architecture. I was studying it before. She gestured vaguely, encompassing her mother's illness, their financial ruin, her shift to physical therapy. Instead of ordering her out, he wheeled closer to the drafting table. It would have transformed the old warehouse district. Sustainable housing, community spaces, local businesses. His fingers traced the drawings with something like longing. Dreams of a different life. Before your father's murder? The family business requires full commitment. His tone turned bitter. Creation gives way to destruction. The moment shattered at approaching footsteps. A handsome man in an expensive suit appeared, smile not quite reaching his eyes. Cousin, I didn't expect to find you entertaining. Vito! Mateo's voice cooled several degrees. This is Dr. Romano's daughter, my physical therapist. Ah, yes, our guest. Vito's gaze swept over Ali with calculated assessment. I trust you're finding everything satisfactory? Something in his manner set off warning bells. Before she could respond, Dante appeared in the doorway, tension radiating from his controlled stance. Boss, the shipment reports need review. Ali took the hint and excused herself, but paused in the corridor at raised voices from around the corner. She's making him stronger, Vito hissed. That wasn't the plan. Watch yourself, Dante's quiet voice carried deadly warning. The boss has eyes everywhere. I'm family, unlike some guard dogs who forgot their place. Ali pressed against the wall, mind racing, the shooting at the cemetery, a predictable moment of vulnerability. Vito's cold eyes and false smile, the implied threat in his words. Her father's warning echoed. Mateo's own family might be turning against him while he's vulnerable. She forced herself to walk normally back to her room, knowing surveillance cameras watched every move. But her thoughts whirled with new understanding. The enemy wasn't just outside the fortress walls. It lived here, smiled at family dinners, and waited for Mateo to show weakness. And somehow, her ability to heal him had disrupted carefully laid plans. 2 weeks into her captivity, Ali watched Mateo's leg twitch from nerve stimulation. That's the strongest response yet, she said clinically, despite her racing heart. Again, Mateo demanded, sweat beading on his forehead. They'd established a rhythm. Mornings for aggressive physical therapy, afternoons for therapeutic massage. His determination never wavered through obvious pain. She'd grown comfortable touching him, and he'd begun showing flashes of humor and intelligence. After sessions, Dante escorted her to her father's guarded guest house. He looked better than he had in months, showing her his well-equipped lab. They've given me everything I need, he explained. Focus on your work with Mateo. The sooner he walks... One evening, Dante surprised her. The boss requests your company for dinner. In the formal dining room, Mateo waited in his wheelchair. Tell me about yourself, he said, as servers brought their first course. Beyond medicine? I wanted to design healing spaces, she admitted. Hospitals that didn't feel institutional. Places where recovery didn't feel like punishment. Architecture. He handed her a napkin and pen. Soon, they were sketching concepts together, his knowledge surprising her. You understand construction principles, she observed. Another life. Before family obligations required. Different skills. Their connection broke when Dante burst in about the Colombo family. Before leaving, Mateo offered her the library. There, she discovered medical texts with Mateo's precise notes. He'd been studying her field extensively. Later, Vito confronted her, barely controlling his anger. Mateo's recovery is becoming inconvenient. If he walks again, certain arrangements will be disrupted. I'm just doing my job. Your job is keeping him dependent. His grip tightened on her arm. Otherwise, your father's comfortable arrangement might become significantly less pleasant. Accidents happen in laboratories. That night, Allie lay sleepless. Her father's safety depended on Mateo's weakness, but their freedom required his strength. Every path held danger. Morning would bring another session. She needed to decide, continue treatment and risk Vito's retaliation, or subtly stall progress and pray Mateo didn't notice. Both men's lives balanced on her choices, with threats closing in from all sides. The morning sun filtered through the glass ceiling of the indoor pool, casting rippling reflections across the water's surface. Allie stood at the pool's edge, watching Mateo's jaw clench as Dante helped remove his shirt, revealing a torso marked by both old scars and new surgical wounds. The water provides natural resistance while supporting your weight, Allie explained, keeping her voice professionally neutral despite the intimate setting. It'll help rebuild muscle memory without straining your spine. Mateo's eyes narrowed. You expect me to let you drag me around like a child's toy? I expect you to trust my methods. She met his gaze steadily. Unless you're afraid of a little water? Something dangerous flickered in his expression, but he nodded to Dante. They used the pool lift to lower him in, and Allie slipped into the warm water beside him. Her hands found his waist, supporting him as they moved to deeper water. The tension between them crackled like electricity. His skin was warm against her palms, muscles rigid with the effort of maintaining control. She guided him through the exercises, feeling every subtle shift and tremor. Relax, she murmured. Let the water do the work. Gradually, his body began to respond. During one movement, his leg kicked slightly, not just a spasm, but controlled motion. Mateo's eyes widened. Again, he demanded. They worked until his arms shook with exhaustion, but he refused to stop, driven by that small victory. When they finally finished, color had returned to his face, along with something like hope in his eyes. Rather than returning her to her room after he dressed, Mateo surprised her. You're coming with me today? Time you understood what you're really involved in. The meeting took place in his study, where various men, some in suits, others clearly soldiers, gathered around a massive table. Allie observed from a corner as Mateo commanded the room from his wheelchair, his presence filling the space more effectively than any physical posturing. They discussed shipping routes, construction contracts, union negotiations, everything sounding legitimate until code words slipped in, revealing the criminal enterprises beneath. Protection money became insurance premiums. Rival territories were market shares. Through it all, Mateo's strategic brilliance shone. He resolved disputes with brutal efficiency, managed competing interests with subtle threats, and expanded their influence through carefully planned moves. The legitimate businesses aren't just fronts, he explained later when they were alone. They're the future. But change requires power, and power in our world comes through less conventional means. After dinner, Allie saw her chance when a maid left her phone unattended. She barely had it in her hands when Dante materialized beside her. Her heart stopped, expecting punishment. Instead, he gestured for her to follow. 10 minutes, he said, showing her a hidden service corridor that led to her father's guest house. Don't make me regret this. Her father's face lit up when she entered, but quickly turned serious. He spread newspaper clippings across his desk. Reports of increased violence in the city, territory grabs by rival families, all since Mateo's injury. Look at the timing, he insisted. Vito visited me just before I asked for the loan. He suggested the Ricci family specifically, said Mateo was reasonable about payment terms. You think he planned this? I think he saw an opportunity to make Mateo vulnerable. The shooting happened 3 weeks after I took the loan. Her father's hands shook. We're pawns in his game, Allie. When she returned through the passage, her mind spinning with implications, she found her room already occupied. Mateo sat in the shadows, his wheelchair positioned to face the door. Interesting evening walk. His voice was deceptively soft. Allie's pulse quickened. I needed air. Try again. He rolled closer, moonlight catching the dangerous glint in his eyes. Where were you? Visiting my father. No point lying when he clearly knew. Through passages only family knows about. His hand shot out, catching her wrist. Who showed you the way? The possessive grip sent shivers down her spine. Fear, yes, but something else too. Something that made her breath catch when he pulled her closer. Answer me. Does it matter? I'm back, aren't I? His thumb traced circles on her pulse point. Everything matters. Your safety matters. I thought I was just your prisoner. Is that what you think? His grip tightened fractionally. That I keep you locked away simply because I can? Don't you? I keep you protected, he corrected, voice dropping lower. There are worse things than being caged in luxury, little bird. Far worse things that would happen if the wrong people discovered your importance. The way he said importance made her shiver again. His hand slid up her arm, leaving trails of heat on her skin. You're making me walk again, he continued. Making me stronger. That makes you valuable. Valuable things in our world tend to disappear, if not properly secured. His words should have frightened her. Instead, they sent heat coursing through her veins. His protectiveness, as possessive as it was, thrilled some dark part of her she hadn't known existed. And who's protecting me from you, she whispered. His laugh was low and dangerous. No one. But then you don't seem to want protection from me, do you? His words hung in the air between them, heavy with promise and threat combined. Allie stood frozen, caught between the urge to pull away and the desire to lean closer, while Mateo watched her internal struggle with predatory intensity. 1 month into her captivity, Allie's hands moved with practiced familiarity across Mateo's bare back, connecting electrodes from her father's experimental stimulation device. The morning sun streamed through tall windows, warming the therapy room and highlighting the scars that marked his olive skin. You're getting better at this, Mateo remarked as she adjusted the settings. The machine or the touching? She kept her tone professional despite the heat rising in her cheeks. His dark eyes met hers in the mirror. Both. The electrical pulses made his muscles twitch beneath her fingers. She focused on the technical aspects, electrode placement, timing, intensity, rather than the intimacy of their position. But when a particularly strong pulse caused him to grip the treatment table, her hands instinctively moved to his shoulders, squeezing gently. Feel that? She asked, masking how his sharp intake of breath affected her. More than last week. His voice was rough. The sensation extends halfway down my thighs now. Her fingers traced the path of his spine, testing nerve responses. His skin felt fever hot under her touch. The signals are definitely getting stronger, though standing is still not yet possible, he finished. But soon. When the session ended, instead of allowing Dante to return her to her room, Mateo surprised her. Get dressed. We're going out. Out? The word felt foreign after a month of confinement. 20 minutes later, she sat beside him in a sleek black SUV, surrounded by security vehicles. They pulled up to an elegant restaurant with a closed sign hanging in the window. Ricci property, he explained as Dante helped him from the car. We'll have privacy here. Inside, sunlight filtered through stained glass windows onto white tablecloths. A single table was set for two in the center of the empty dining room. The chef himself appeared to take their order, treating Mateo with obvious deference. I used to dream of designing places like this, Ali admitted, admiring the restaurant's architecture. Before everything changed. Tell me. It wasn't a request. She described her mother's decline, the tremors that became paralysis, the brilliant mind trapped in a failing body. Dad was convinced he could save her, poured everything into research. When traditional medicine gave up, he started developing his own treatments. Like the ones you're using on me, she nodded. But we ran out of time and money. The debt collectors came after the funeral. So you abandoned your dreams to become a healer instead, his expression softened. Following your father's obsession. Someone had to keep him grounded, keep his research going while paying the bills. She studied him. Your turn. Tell me something real. For a moment, she thought he'd refuse. Then, I was 12, the first time I saw my father beat my mother unconscious. She'd bought the wrong wine for a family dinner. I tried to stop him, ended up with 3 broken ribs. Allie's hand moved unconsciously toward his across the table. He allowed the touch. She never recovered fully. Lives in a private facility now, barely aware of her surroundings. I visit her grave every month because it's easier than seeing what he reduced her to. His fingers tightened around hers. I swore I'd never become him. Then he was killed, and at 19, I had to take control. Power corrupts, they say, but sometimes power is the only thing keeping the real monsters at bay. The vulnerability in his voice made her chest ache. Is that why you're different with me? To prove you're not him? I'm different with you because Dante burst through the door, face grim. The lab's been hit. They raced back to the mansion, finding Ali's father's workspace destroyed. Shattered equipment littered the floor. Warning notes written in red ink promised worse too. Come. Security footage showed men in black breaking in. Moretti soldiers, Dante confirmed. But Allie noticed something else. Wait! Rewind! The footage showed Vito speaking to the men an hour before the break-in, passing something that looked like building plans. Matteo's expression turned lethal. You're certain? That's Vito's jacket. I saw him wearing it this morning. That night, alone in her room, a knock startled her. Matteo wheeled himself in, dismissing the guards. I never wanted you caught in this war, he said quietly. The things I've done, the enemies I've made, you shouldn't have to pay for them. I made my choice when I offered to heal you. Did you? He moved closer until she could see the tension in his jaw, the conflict in his eyes. Or did I force your hand by threatening your father? Both can be true. She knelt beside his chair, bringing them face to face. You gave me no choice, but I've chosen every day since to keep trying, to believe there's more to you than violence and control. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing her lower lip. There isn't. The violence is part of me. The need for control runs in my blood. Yet here you are, apologizing for putting me in danger. Their faces were inches apart now, his breath mingling with hers. The monster you think you are wouldn't care. I care too much. His voice dropped to a whisper. That's what makes me dangerous. The air between them crackled with possibility. Allie felt caught in his gravity, unable and unwilling to pull away. His hand slid into her hair, grip firm but gentle. Their noses brushed. One small movement would close the distance. The morning sun glinted off the pool's surface as Allie supported Matteo through his water therapy exercises. His progress over the past weeks had been remarkable. Increased sensation in his legs, stronger core control. The water allowed movements impossible on land, and she couldn't help noticing how his muscles flexed beneath wet skin. The first shot shattered the glass ceiling. Matteo reacted instantly, yanking Allie behind him as two black-clad figures rappelled down. Get to the edge, he ordered, voice deadly calm. More glass rained down as Allie helped him toward the pool's rim, where his wheelchair waited. The attackers landed, weapons raised. Time seemed to slow. In one fluid motion, Matteo grabbed his hidden gun from the wheelchair, firing twice. 2 perfect headshots. The bodies splashed into the crimson-stained water. Shouts and gunfire echoed through the mansion. Dante burst in with security teams, face grim. Breach at 3 points. Inside help. We need to move you now. Guards wrapped them in towels as they were rushed through corridors, still dripping. Matteo kept Allie pressed against him, shielding her with his body despite his vulnerability. They reached a heavy steel door that opened to reveal a windowless room with basic furnishings. Bed, bathroom, small sitting area. 48 hours minimum, Dante said, as the door sealed behind them. Until we clear every inch and every person. Allie's hands shook as she examined the graze on Matteo's shoulder, acquired during their escape. It's shallow, she murmured, cleaning the wound with supplies from the room's first aid kit. But it needs... You're trembling! His fingers caught her wrist, gripped gentle despite the deadly skill he'd just demonstrated. Are you afraid of me now, after seeing what I'm capable of? She met his eyes. No, I'm trembling because... Heat flooded her cheeks. Because watching you protect me shouldn't have been attractive. Something dangerous flickered in his gaze. You find violence attractive? I find you caring enough to risk yourself for me attractive. Her fingers traced the edge of his wound. Even injured, even vulnerable, your first instinct was to shield me. Hours passed in the confined space. They talked to distract themselves from the tension of proximity and lingering adrenaline. Matteo described his vision for the family's future: legitimate businesses, clean money, influence without bloodshed. The old ways are dying, he explained. Territory wars, revenge cycles. It's unsustainable. I want to build something lasting. He gestured to his legs. Getting shot made me realize how fragile power based on fear really is. Allie shared her own dreams, a specialized clinic combining traditional therapy with her father's research. So many patients get abandoned by the system, told they'll never improve, like my mother was, like you were, until you prove them wrong. His hand found hers in the dim light. You see possibility where others see only damage. Night fell, marked only by the room's lighting automatically dimming. They'd been avoiding the sleeping arrangement issue, but exhaustion made it unavoidable. Matteo insisted Allie take the bed while he remained in his chair. She woke to his strangled sounds hours later. Like that first night she'd found him trapped in nightmares, he thrashed against invisible enemies. This time when she touched his shoulder, he didn't lash out. "Move over," she whispered, sliding onto the narrow bed beside him. He stiffened. "Ali, just sleep. You're not alone anymore." Slowly, his arms wrapped around her. She fitted herself against him, careful of his injury, head tucked under his chin, his breathing steadied, muscles relaxing. "I haven't slept properly since the shooting," he admitted into her hair, always waiting for the next attack. "You can rest now. I've got you." Morning brought new awareness of their position. Legs tangled, her hand resting over his heart, his fingers threaded through her hair. Neither moved to separate. "This changes things," he said quietly. "I know." They spent the second day closer, barriers crumbling. He taught her chess on a magnetic travel set, found in a drawer. She showed him therapeutic stretches he could do in the chair. Their touches lingered, gazes held longer, but neither pushed for more. This fragile trust felt too precious to rush. The second night, they shared the bed without pretense. Ali curled into his side, his arms secure around her waist. No nightmares disturbed his sleep. At sunset the next day, the door finally opened. Dante's expression shifted from professional alert to knowing amusement as he found them together on the bed, fully clothed but unmistakably intimate. "Perimeter's clear," he reported. "All threats eliminated. We found the inside man, junior guard bought by the Morettis." Matteo nodded, fingers still absently stroking Ali's arm. "Have my room prepared, with medical equipment for continued therapy." He glanced at her. "And Ali will be staying there. For treatment purposes." "Treatment purposes," Dante echoed, not bothering to hide his smile. "Of course, boss." Ali felt her cheeks warm, but met Matteo's gaze steadily. They both knew this wasn't about sex. Not yet. This was about trust, about finding safety in each other's presence, about nightmares kept at bay by gentle touches and shared breaths. "Your father will need to be moved closer," Matteo added. "The guest house is too exposed." "And too far for proper supervision of his treatments," Dante agreed smoothly, playing along with the pretense of practicality. As they prepared to leave the panic room, Matteo caught Ali's hand. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." She squeezed his fingers. "For treatment purposes." His answering smile held no trace of the ruthless boss who'd killed without hesitation 2 days ago. This was just Matteo, her patient, her protector, perhaps something more. Sunlight filtered through Matteo's bedroom windows, painting golden streaks across the sketches spread over his lap. Ali watched him from her pillow, admiring how his strong hands moved precisely across the paper, creating clean lines and elegant curves. "What are you designing?" she asked softly, not wanting to break the peaceful morning spell. He tilted the sketch toward her. "A rehabilitation center, state-of-the-art facilities, research labs, long-term patient housing." His fingers traced the outline of a garden courtyard. Natural light everywhere, spaces that promote healing rather than institutional sterility. Ali sat up, sheet pooling around her waist as she leaned closer. "You combined my clinic dreams with your architectural vision." "It could work," he said, adding detail to a therapy pool area. "Your father's research facility on one wing, treatment rooms on another. Everything we both wanted to build." The intimacy of sharing dreams carried into their morning therapy session. Ali had been preparing for this moment, working with Dante to install a specialized harness system that would support Matteo's weight while allowing controlled movement. "Trust me," she said, securing the final strap around his chest. "You're ready for this?" His jaw tightened, but he nodded. With careful movements, she activated the hydraulic lift. Matteo's body rose slowly from his chair, the harness taking his weight while leaving his legs free. "Focus on finding your center," she instructed, hands steady on his hips. "Don't force the movement, just feel your body's natural alignment." Minutes passed in concentrated silence. Then she felt it, the slightest shift in his muscle tension, legs beginning to take weight. Tears pricked her eyes as Matteo stood, partially supported, but undeniably vertical for the first time in months. "Look at me," she whispered. When he met her gaze, the raw emotion there stole her breath. Vulnerability and triumph warred in his expression, walls crumbling under the magnitude of the moment. His hand cupped her cheek, drawing her closer until their faces were inches apart. "Ali," he breathed, and then his mouth was on hers. The kiss was everything their charged moments had promised. Passionate yet achingly tender, months of resisted attraction finally breaking free. His lips moved against hers with devastating thoroughness, claiming and giving in equal measure. When they parted, both breathing heavily, his forehead rested against hers. "I've wanted to do that since you challenged me that first day," he admitted. That evening, Matteo insisted she join him for the weekly family dinner. Dressed in a borrowed silk blouse and slim black pants, she felt the weight of curious stares as he guided her to the seat at his right hand, a position heavy with significance. "Ms. Romano's treatments have proven invaluable," Matteo announced to the assembled captains and lieutenants. "She and her father are under my personal protection. Their safety and comfort are paramount." Across the table, Vito's knuckles whitened around his wine glass. The barely concealed rage in his eyes sent chills down Ali's spine. After dinner, walking the dim corridor to Matteo's room, she overheard urgent voices from his office. "Moretti's men are getting bolder," Dante was saying. "Third shipment hit this month. They shouldn't have our schedules unless someone's feeding them information," another voice finished. "The boss needs to know." Ali hurried past, mind racing. Later, lying in Matteo's bed, their bodies curved together, hands exploring with increasing intimacy, though still maintaining certain boundaries, she pushed aside thoughts of betrayal and violence. Matteo's fingers traced her collarbone, his touch reverent. "You've given me back more than the ability to stand," he murmured into her hair. "I forgot there were gentle things in the world. Forgot what it felt like to want to build instead of destroy." She turned in his arms, studying the contradiction of his face. Capable of such coldness to enemies, yet so tender with her. "You're not what I expected," she admitted. "No." His thumb brushed her lower lip. "What did you expect?" "A monster, a brutal crime boss who'd use my father's debt to enslave me." She touched the scar on his shoulder. "Instead, I found an architect trapped in a warrior's life. A protector who carries the weight of an empire, but still dreams of creating beauty." His kiss was softer this time, deep with unspoken emotion. "You see too much." "I see you," she whispered against his mouth. They explored each other slowly, hands and lips learning sensitive places, but never crossing that final line. It was enough to share this vulnerability, to let walls crumble in the safety of darkness. Later, watching him sleep, Ali confronted the truth she'd been avoiding. She was falling in love with Matteo Ricci, a man who ordered deaths over breakfast, who controlled a criminal empire through calculated violence, yet touched her like she was precious beyond measure. 2 months had passed. In 4 weeks, her deadline would arrive. Either Matteo would walk or her father would pay his debt in blood. Even if she succeeded, there was no guarantee of freedom. She was too deep now, knew too much. And worse, she wasn't sure she wanted freedom anymore, not if it meant leaving the complicated, dangerous, brilliant man beside her. Matteo stirred, instinctively drawing her closer. She fitted herself against him, pushing away thoughts of deadlines and consequences. For now, there was just this, shared warmth in the darkness, the steady beat of his heart under her palm, and the terrifying knowledge that she'd lost herself to a man who dealt in death, yet held her like she was life itself. Through the large windows of the therapy room, morning sunlight painted golden stripes across the exercise mats. Ali studied Matteo as he gripped the parallel bars, his knuckles white with determination. 2 months of grueling work had transformed their sessions from basic movements to actual steps. "Ready?" she asked, positioning herself to support his weight. Matteo nodded, jaw clenched. With careful precision, he shifted his weight forward. His legs trembled but held. 1 step, another. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his eyes blazed with triumph. 3 more than yesterday, Ali noted, trying to maintain professional distance despite her awareness of his body against hers. These morning sessions had become charged with unspoken tension, their touches lingering longer than necessary. After he settled back in his wheelchair, Matteo caught her hand. "Come with me today. There's someone I want you to meet." The private care facility sat on manicured grounds, more luxury resort than hospital. Matteo led Ali through quiet corridors to a sun-filled room where an elegant woman sat motionless by the window, her vacant eyes fixed on the gardens. "Mama," Matteo said softly, wheeling closer. "I brought someone special." Ali's heart clenched watching him tend to his mother, adjusting her blanket, gently smoothing her hair. This was a different Matteo than the ruthless boss who commanded an empire. Here, his touch was infinitely tender, his voice soft as he told his mother about his progress. The doctor said she'll never recover, he explained later as they drove back. My father's last beating was too severe. I was 19 when I found her. His hands tightened on the armrests. That's when I took control of the family, made sure he could never hurt anyone again. Back at the mansion, urgent whispers and tense faces greeted their return. Dante pulled Matteo aside immediately, leaving Ali alone. Worried about her father and their approaching deadline, she slipped into Matteo's empty office, searching for answers. The contract was in his desk, pages of legal terms hiding ugly truth. Her father's debt wasn't just money. The Ricci family wanted his research, his formulas for nerve regeneration that could be modified for drug production. They never intended to let him go. Tears blurred her vision. She'd thought their connection was real, that Matteo's tenderness meant something. But she'd been naive. It was all business. That evening's therapy session crackled with tension. As she helped him through his exercises, Ali couldn't contain her anger. "Were you ever going to tell me the truth about my father's contract?" she demanded, hands firm on his shoulders as he worked through a stretch. Matteo stilled. "You went through my office. You're using him to create drugs. This was never about money." "It's not that simple." "It is that simple." She stepped back, trembling. "I trusted you. I thought—" She broke off as he grabbed her wrist, pulling her closer. "What did you think?" His voice was rough. "That I'd let you both walk away? That I could watch you leave?" "Matteo!" His mouth crashed into hers, desperate and demanding. She should push him away, but her body betrayed her, melting into his touch. Somehow they ended up against the wall, his wheelchair forgotten as he braced himself on his stronger legs, pinning her with his body. "I need you," he growled against her throat. "Not just for healing. I need you in my life, in my bed, in every part of me that I thought was dead." Their clothes fell away between heated kisses. When he finally pushed inside her, it was with the same intensity that defined everything between them, passionate yet tender, violent yet loving. They moved together desperately, months of resisted attraction exploding into devastating pleasure. Afterward, still breathing heavily, Matteo cupped her face. "Let me explain everything. Trust me just a little longer." Ali started to respond, but movement in the doorway caught her attention. Matteo stood unassisted, taking careful steps toward her. "You did this," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Not just fixing my body. You made me want more than survival, made me want a future worth building." Joy and pride warred with her lingering doubts. She moved to meet him, their kiss a gentle contrast to their earlier passion. A commotion in the hallway broke the moment. Dante burst in, face grave. "Boss, they've taken her father! The legitimate business records. Everything's burning." Matteo's expression hardened instantly, the tender lover replaced by the calculating boss. But his hand found Ali's, squeezing gently, a promise in the midst of chaos. "Get everyone in position," he ordered Dante. "No one sleeps until we find him." Ali's world spun as implications hit her. Her father kidnapped, evidence destroyed, everything they'd built together, threatening to collapse. But Matteo's grip anchored her, his touch a reminder that nothing between them had been simple from the start. The next hours would change everything. But for just a moment longer, she let herself remember how it felt to dance between danger and desire, to fall for a man who commanded death, yet treasured life, who built empires through violence, yet touched her with reverence. Whatever came next, that truth remained. Complex, devastating, and beautiful in its contradiction. The mansion erupted into controlled chaos as Matteo coordinated search teams from his study. Maps spread across his desk, markers indicating possible locations where Vito might have taken Dr. Romano. Ali watched him lean heavily on a cane, refusing the wheelchair despite trembling legs. "Send teams to all Moretti properties," he ordered Dante. "They've been too quiet lately. Check if Vito made contact." Ali hugged herself, the contract she'd found earlier burning in her mind. Everything felt uncertain now. Her father's safety, Matteo's true intentions, their fragile connection. The physical therapy room's passionate encounter seemed distant, overshadowed by fear. "Your father's research files," she said quietly. "Were they in the warehouse that burned?" Matteo's jaw tightened. "Backup copies are safe. The fire destroyed evidence of legitimate business plans, financial records." His phone buzzed, cutting him off. The caller ID made his expression darken. Vito. The room fell silent as Matteo put the call on speaker. Vito's smooth voice filled the space. Cousin? Missing something or someone? Where is he? Matteo's tone was lethal. Safe for now. Dr. Romano's been quite helpful, though he needed some convincing. Ali's heart clenched at the implication. She stepped forward, but Dante held her back. What do you want? Matteo asked. Nothing you'd give willingly, but don't worry, I'll take it anyway. The line went dead. Matteo's team traced the call to an abandoned pharmaceutical facility Vito had recently acquired through shell companies. Within minutes, heavily armed men assembled in the mansion's courtyard. I'm coming with you, Ali insisted, as Matteo prepared to leave. Absolutely not. My father might need medical attention. You know I can help. She met his gaze steadily. And I need answers. Something shifted in his expression. After a long moment, he nodded. During the tense drive, Matteo finally spoke. The contract wasn't what you think. Your father's research. It was never about drugs. It's the cornerstone of something bigger. Ali turned from the window. What do you mean? I've been planning to legitimize parts of the family business, starting with medical technology, revolutionary treatments that could help thousands. His hand found hers in the darkness. The contract makes your father a major shareholder once the treatment succeeds. He'd have resources to continue his research properly, legally. But the warehouse fire destroyed evidence of shell companies I created to transition funds, clean money to build rehabilitation centers, research facilities. He laughed bitterly. Vito must have realized what I was planning. He's always wanted control, but he's too short-sighted to see beyond traditional operations. The convoy stopped a mile from the facility. As men took positions, Matteo gripped Ali's arm. Stay with Marco's team, please. She nodded, but the moment confusion erupted at the facility's entrance, she slipped away. Her father needed her, and she knew the layout of pharmaceutical labs. The building's service entrance was unguarded. Inside, she followed the sound of voices to a makeshift laboratory. Through a window, she saw her father working frantically, blood staining his shirt collar. Two armed men watched while Vito paced. The formula needs to be stronger, Vito was saying, something addictive enough to create instant demand. Ali's stomach turned. She had to get her father out. A fire alarm provided distraction. As guards ran to check, she darted inside. Her father's eyes widened in horror. Ali, no? Cold metal pressed against her neck. How convenient, Vito purred. I was wondering how to lure you here. Footsteps approached. Matteo appeared in the doorway, gun raised. Despite his cane, his aim was steady. Let them go, Vito. Why? So you can destroy everything with your legitimate business dreams. Vito's laugh was ugly. The family needs to stay true to its nature. Your father understood that before he died. You killed him, Matteo said flatly. He was weak, like you're becoming. These two would have helped you dismantle everything we built. Vito's grip tightened. But their deaths will solve that. Poor Matteo, driven mad by his injury, murdered his doctor and the beautiful therapist before killing himself. Very tragic. During Vito's speech, Ali caught her father's eye. He inched toward a table of medical supplies. The family will never follow you, Matteo said. They'll follow strength. Something you've lost, cousin. Ali drove her elbow back sharply. As Vito stumbled, Dr. Romano lunged forward with a syringe. The needle found Vito's neck, but he recovered too quickly. Roaring with rage, he shoved Ali hard. She crashed into Matteo just as Vito tried to regain his balance. All three tumbled toward the stairwell. Ali caught herself on the railing, but the men pitched forward. Her scream echoed as they fell, a tangle of limbs and violence. At the bottom, Matteo lay terrifyingly still. Blood pooled beneath his head. Vito pushed himself up, dazed but moving. The sedative hadn't fully taken effect. His hand found his dropped gun. Through tears, Ali watched him raise the weapon, her world narrowing to Matteo's unmoving form and Vito's unsteady aim. Through tears, Ali watched Matteo's motionless form at the bottom of the stairs, blood pooling beneath his head. Before she could scream, rough hands grabbed her from behind. Vito, though stumbling from the partial sedative, managed to press his gun against her ribs. Move, he slurred, shoving her toward the exit. Doctor, you too, unless you want to watch your daughter die. Her father hurried forward, hands raised. Two of Vito's men emerged from the shadows, zip-tying their wrists. The cold plastic bit into Ali's skin as they were marched through dark corridors to a waiting SUV. Time blurred during the drive. Ali kept seeing Matteo's crumpled body, the blood. She blinked back tears, forcing herself to focus. The vehicle turned down progressively more isolated roads before stopping at a derelict warehouse. Inside, harsh fluorescent lights illuminated makeshift lab equipment. Vito's men shoved them into metal chairs while their boss paced, fighting the sedative's effects through sheer rage. "You know," Vito said, voice thick, "this wasn't the original plan. It was supposed to be clean. One shot to paralyze him, let him waste away while I gradually took control." He grabbed Allie's chin. "Then you had to complicate everything with your miracle treatment." "You orchestrated the hit?" Dr. Romano asked, horror in his voice. "Of course. Matteo was distracted that day, visiting his mother's grave. Perfect opportunity." Vito released Allie with a shove. "The family needs traditional leadership, not his legitimate business fantasies. Your research was meant to expand our drug trade, not fund medical centers." He gestured to the lab equipment. "Now, doctor, you're going to finish that formula. Something addictive, something profitable. Meanwhile, I'll ensure evidence shows you both stole Ricci research for rival families." His smile was cruel. "Your deaths will be quite tragic." Across town, consciousness returned to Matteo in waves of pain. He blinked, recognizing the room in Vito's compound where he'd fallen. Dante knelt beside him, relief visible on his usually stoic face. "Don't move yet, boss. Medic's on the way." Matteo ignored him, pushing himself up despite screaming muscles. "Allie?" Dante's expression darkened. "Vito took her and her father. We're tracking them." Cold fury replaced pain. Matteo gripped the wall, forcing himself to stand. His legs shook but held. Months of Allie's therapy had strengthened him more than Vito realized. "Sir, you need rest," Dante protested. "Let me handle." "No!" Matteo's voice could have frozen hell. "She saved me. Now I save her." In the compound's tactical room, Matteo assembled his most loyal soldiers. His body ached, but determination drove him forward. As men gathered equipment, he pulled Dante aside. "Remember those shell companies we created? The ones from the burned files? Yes. They were phase 1. I've been building a network of legitimate businesses, medical research, rehabilitation centers, private hospitals. Clean operations with enough protective connections to keep us safe during transition." Matteo checked his weapon. The contract Allie found was just one piece. Her father's research isn't for drugs. It's the foundation for revolutionary treatments we'll patent legally. Understanding dawned in Dante's eyes. "That's why Vito moved now. He realized you were changing everything." "The family's future isn't in territory wars and drug trades. It's in innovation, in building something lasting." Matteo's expression hardened. "But first, we deal with betrayal." Their intelligence team tracked Vito's vehicle to an industrial district. Thermal imaging showed multiple guards around a warehouse, with 3 heat signatures in a central room. As night fell, Matteo stood before his assembled men. Training and therapy had restored his strength, rage providing the final push needed to stand unassisted. His quiet voice carried absolute authority as he outlined the attack plan. "Team 1 takes the perimeter. Team 2 handles any resistance inside. Dante leads the main assault while I approach from the rear access." His dark eyes promised violence. "No one who touches her lives." Dawn crept through the warehouse windows in pale strips, illuminating the makeshift lab where Allie watched her father work. His hands trembled slightly as he measured chemicals, deliberately making small errors that would render the formula useless without being obvious about it. 2 armed guards stood nearby, their attention wavering after the long night shift. Vito stalked between workstations, checking his phone obsessively. The sedative's effects had worn off, replaced by barely contained agitation. "Faster!" he snapped at Dr. Romano. "Everything needs to be ready before noon." Allie shifted in her chair, working at her restraints. "The announcement won't matter if the formula isn't stable," she said, trying to buy time. "Rush it, and you'll have nothing to show the families." Vito backhanded her across the face. "Shut up! Your only value now is keeping your father cooperative." Dr. Romano flinched at the sound, but kept working, his eyes meeting Allie's briefly. In that glance, she saw his terror and determination to protect her. The morning light strengthened, marking each passing hour like a countdown. Vito gathered his lieutenants, rehearsing his speech about Matteo's tragic accident and his own rightful succession. His voice carried through the warehouse, detailing how he would restore traditional values to the family business. The explosion came without warning. The west wall erupted in flame and debris, the shockwave knocking everyone off their feet. Smoke filled the air as gunfire erupted outside. Through the chaos, Allie heard the precise, controlled sound of Matteo's men advancing. More explosions followed, carefully placed. Charges creating tactical entry points. Guards rushed to defend positions, but they were being systematically eliminated by an unseen force moving through the smoke. Ali caught glimpses of Matteo through the haze. Despite his injuries from the fall, he moved like a predator, each action precise and lethal. This wasn't the man who sketched buildings in the early morning light or held her with gentle hands. This was the youngest capo in the city's history, demonstrating exactly why he'd earned that title. She watched in equal parts awe and horror as he dispatched Vito's men with ruthless efficiency. His movements weren't as fluid as they must have been before the injury, but his tactical brilliance compensated. He used the environment, his men's positions, and his opponent's fear with devastating effectiveness. "You see what he really is now?" Vito grabbed her arm, yanking her up as his men fell around them. "This is the monster I've always seen." But Ali saw something different. Every kill was clean, quick, necessary. There was no cruelty in Matteo's efficiency, just the brutal math of survival. Vito dragged her toward the stairs, using her as a shield as they climbed to the roof. The helicopter's rotors were already spinning, drowning out the combat below. Dr. Romano remained below, forgotten in the chaos, still zip-tied near his workstation. The rooftop door burst open. Matteo emerged alone, gun trained on his cousin. Blood stained his shirt. The fall had reopened healing wounds, but his aim didn't waver. "It was always you," Vito spat, pressing his gun to Ali's temple. "Grandfather's perfect heir. The prodigy who could do no wrong. I was older, I had experience, but he only saw you." "He saw what you really are," Matteo's voice carried despite the helicopter's noise. "Weak, short-sighted, ruled by jealousy instead of strategy." "Weak?" Vito laughed manically. "I orchestrated everything. The hit at the cemetery, turning your own men against you, using her to rush my timeline when she started healing you. I've planned this for years, and still failed." Matteo took a step forward. "Like you always have." Ali felt Vito's grip tighten painfully. "Stay back! I'll kill her!" "You'll be dead before your finger tightens on that trigger." The door creaked behind them. Dr. Romano emerged, having somehow freed himself in the chaos. His face showed pure paternal terror as he rushed forward, reaching for his daughter. Time slowed. Vito swung his gun toward the unexpected threat. Ali screamed. Matteo lunged forward, impossibly fast despite his injuries. The gunshot cracked across the rooftop. Matteo's body slammed into them both as the bullet meant for Dr. Romano went wide. In the impact, his shoulder caught Vito's chest. The cousin's eyes went wide with shock as he stumbled backward, arms windmilling at the roof's edge. Then he was gone. Matteo collapsed, blood spreading across his shirt from a wound in his side. Ali rushed to him, putting pressure on the injury. His eyes found hers, strangely peaceful despite the pain. "I told you I'd never let anyone hurt what's mine." Blood soaked through Ali's trembling fingers as the SUV swerved through city streets. Her medical training took over, pushing aside the chaos of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "Stay with me," she ordered, applying more pressure to Matteo's wound. His skin felt clammy, but his grip on her arm remained strong. Dante drove like a man possessed, taking corners at dangerous speeds while speaking rapidly into his phone, coordinating their return to the mansion. In the third row, Dr. Romano watched his daughter work, his face a mix of pride and concern. "The bullet's still inside," Ali announced, her clinical tone masking her fear. "We need a surgical team ready." Matteo's eyes flickered open. "Already. Arranged." His voice came rough but steady. "Had contingencies for everything." "Stop talking," Ali commanded, though her gentle touch betrayed her harsh tone. "Save your strength." The mansion appeared ahead, medical vehicles already waiting. Everything moved with military precision, Matteo's planning evident even in his own emergency care. A private surgical team whisked him away while armed guards secured the perimeter. Ali stood in the grand foyer, her hands and clothes stained with Matteo's blood. The reality of the morning's events crashed over her. The warehouse, Vito's death, Matteo taking a bullet to protect her father. "Alessandra." Her father's voice broke through her thoughts. They collapsed into each other's arms, months of fear and separation pouring out in tears and whispered assurances. Hours passed in tense waiting. Dante provided clean clothes and food, handling the aftermath of Vito's coup with quiet efficiency. By evening, the doctor emerged with good news. The surgery had been successful. "He's asking for both of you," the doctor said, gesturing to Ali and her father. They found Matteo propped up in his bed, pale but alert. Papers and folders lay scattered across his lap. Despite his condition, his eyes held the sharp focus she'd come to know during their months together. "Dr. Romano!" Matteo's voice was hoarse but clear. "These are yours." He handed over a thick file. Ali watched her father's eyes widen as he read. This is incredible. The funding, the facilities, it's everything we discussed and more. The original contract, Matteo explained, was always about legitimate investment. Your research will revolutionize nerve regeneration treatment. The Ricci fortune will fund it, protect it, and ensure it reaches those who need it. Dante entered, carrying more documents, evidence clearing both Matteo and Dr. Romano of wrongdoing, proving Vito's elaborate plot to frame them while stealing the research for illegal purposes. Ali realized the depth of protection Matteo had built around them, even while appearing to hold them captive. Your debt is cleared, Matteo, told Dr. Romano. But I hope you'll stay on as head of research. We have plans for a proper facility. Her father looked overwhelmed. Yes, of course. The potential with these resources. Give us a moment, Matteo requested. Dr. Romano squeezed his daughter's hand before leaving with Dante. Alone, Matteo reached for Ali. She went to him without hesitation, careful of his wounds, as she sat beside him on the bed. His fingers traced the bruise Vito's backhand had left on her cheek. I should have killed him slower for touching you, he murmured. You shouldn't have taken that bullet at all, she countered. You're still healing from everything else. I'll always take the bullets meant for you. His hand cupped her face. From the moment you walked into my study, ready to bargain with the devil to save your father, I knew you were different. You saw me, not just the monster everyone fears, but the man I could be. Tears filled Ali's eyes. You were never the monster they claimed. I saw your soul in how you treated your mother, in your drawings, in the gentle way you held me through your nightmares. You healed more than my body, Alessandra. You gave me a soul again. His thumb brushed away her tears. You're mine now, and I'm yours, the man you created from the ruins. She leaned in, kissing him softly. We created this together. Everything we talked about, the clinic, the research center, legitimizing the business. We can make it all real. It's already happening. Dante's been implementing our plans since Vito showed his hand. Matteo shifted, making room for her to lie beside him. The empires built on blood are dying, Alessandra. The future belongs to those who adapt. Your father's research is just the beginning. Ali curled carefully against his uninjured side, her head resting on his shoulder. And the protection? The connections we still need? Some shadows are necessary to protect the light, he answered. But the darkness will serve the light now, not consume it. His fingers stroked through her hair. Rest, love. Tomorrow we start building everything we dreamed about. She felt the steady beat of his heart beneath her hand, strong and sure, despite everything his body had endured. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of his embrace, Ali knew they would succeed, not just in healing his body or saving her father's research, but in transforming an empire of violence into something that could truly help people. The monster they all feared had found his soul in her healing hands, and together they would build something neither of them could have imagined alone. 6 months later, sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows of a modern mansion overlooking the city. Ali stood blindfolded in the driveway, Matteo's hands warm on her shoulders. Ready? His voice held barely contained excitement. I've been ready since you kidnapped me this morning, she teased. Borrowed. I borrowed you from the clinic. He removed the blindfold. Ali gasped. Before them stood a stunning fusion of glass and stone, with sweeping architectural lines that took her breath away. The design embodied everything they'd discussed during those late-night conversations in his study. Her vision of healing spaces merged with his bold structural choices. You did this? She turned to him, noting how smoothly he moved now, his limp barely noticeable after months of continued therapy. Every line, every detail. His eyes sparkled with pride. Want to see inside? Before she could answer, he swept her into his arms. She laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. Matteo, you're back. Is perfectly fine, thanks to my brilliant physical therapist. He carried her up the steps with easy strength. Though I might need a private session later, just to be sure. At the threshold, he paused. Through the glass doors, Ali could see an open-concept interior that somehow managed to feel both grand and intimate. Welcome home, amore. He carried her inside, his steps confident and sheer, such a far cry from those first desperate therapy sessions. The foyer opened into a great room where afternoon light played across Italian marble floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city below. It's perfect, she whispered, taking in details that spoke of both their tastes, Clean, modern lines softened by warm materials, medical functionality disguised by elegant design. Mateo carried her through the house, pointing out features with boyish enthusiasm: the indoor therapy pool with adjustable depth settings, the fully equipped home gym, a scientific library adjacent to her home office. Every space reflected thoughtful consideration of both their needs. Finally, they reached the master suite. The city stretched out below their private terrace, glittering in the late afternoon sun. Mateo set her down but kept her close, his hand settling on her hips. "I have something for you." He reached into his pocket. Two things, actually. The first was a small velvet box. Inside, Allie found her mother's wedding ring, the delicate vintage piece she hadn't seen since her father sold it to fund his research after her mother's death. "How did you—" Her voice cracked. "Took some detective work. Your father remembered the pawn shop. The owner remembered selling it to a collector." He shrugged as if tracking down a specific ring across the country was nothing. "The collector required some persuasion to part with it." Tears blurred her vision as she slipped it onto her finger. The familiar weight felt like recovering a piece of her heart. "And this," he pulled out a rolled tube of papers, "is our future." Allie unrolled the blueprints with trembling hands. The designs showed a state-of-the-art rehabilitation center, larger and more advanced than anything she dared dream of building. Notes in Mateo's precise handwriting detailed specialized wings for different types of therapy, research laboratories, family housing units. "The land is already purchased," he said softly. "Your father's team is ready to install the latest equipment. We'll be able to help so many people, Allie. Not just the ones who can afford it, everyone who needs it." She traced the lines of the building through tears. "You designed this yourself?" "With considerable input from a certain brilliant therapist who once dreamed of being an architect." He pulled her close, one hand cupping her face. "You gave me back my legs, my future, my soul. Let me give you back your dreams in return." Her fingers found the scar on his back where Vito's bullet had struck. So much pain and violence in their past, yet here they stood in a house built on healing and hope. "The world will always see Il Mostro, the monster who rules the city through fear," he murmured. "Let them. They'll never know this side of me. The man who designs buildings instead of destroying them. The man who funds hospitals instead of protection rackets. This man belongs only to you." His thumb brushed away her tears. "I'll always be dangerous to those who threaten what's mine. But to you, Alessandra, these hands will only ever bring healing." She rose on tiptoes, pressing her lips to his. The kiss was tender, yet fierce, like the man himself. A perfect balance of strength and gentleness. His arms tightened around her as the city lights began twinkling to life beyond their windows, a constellation of possibilities spreading out before them. 3 months ago, she'd walked into his study expecting to find only darkness. Instead, she'd found a soul as wounded as the body she was meant to heal. Their bargain had started with desperation but ended with something neither could have imagined. A future built on the foundation of who they were together, not who the world believed them to be. His lips traced her jaw. "Stay with me forever?" "I already am." She kissed him again, pouring all her love into it. "Forever started the moment I saw past your walls." The sun sank lower, painting their new home in shades of gold and promise. Through the windows, the city that had once seemed so threatening now looked like a kingdom of opportunity. A place where healing could flourish in the shadow of necessary darkness, where love could transform monsters into architects of dreams.